My boss fired me for attending my dad's funeral, so I exposed a secret and watched his empire crumble. My name's irrelevant for this story, but you can call me Jay. 3 years ago, I landed what I thought was my dream job at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. The company, which I'll call Prestige Marketing Solutions, had about 150 employees and handled accounts for some pretty big-name clients. The salary was decent. The office was downtown with a view of the lake, and my boss, let's call him Richard, seemed charismatic during the interview process. That charisma? Pure facade. Richard was the kind of boss you read about in nightmare threads on this very subreddit. Micromanaging to the extreme, verbally abusive, played favorites like it was an Olympic sport, and had a temper that could go from 0 to nuclear in seconds flat. But the job market was tough when I started. I had student loans breathing down my neck, and honestly, I thought I could tough it out. I was wrong about a lot of things back then. The red flags started small. Richard would send emails at 2 a.m. and expect responses within the hour. He'd schedule emergency meetings on Saturdays that could have been handled with a simple email. He once made a junior designer cry in front of the entire office because she used the wrong shade of blue in a mock-up. We had a revolving door of employees. People would last 3 to 6 months max before they quit or get fired. But here's the thing, I'm meticulous. Annoyingly so. My friends joke that I keep receipts for everything, both literally and figuratively. So when I started noticing things that seemed off about how Richard ran the company, I started keeping records. Not because I planned some grand revenge. I just figured it might be useful someday if things went south. I documented everything. Every inappropriate comment, every violation of labor laws, every suspicious financial decision I had access to. I had an encrypted folder on my personal laptop that I updated weekly. Call it insurance. Call it paranoia. Whatever it was, it saved my life, or at least my sanity. Now, let's fast forward to 3 months ago, September 15th, 2024, a date that's burned into my memory. I got the call at 4:47 a.m. It was my mom, and I knew from the sound of her voice before she even spoke. My dad had passed away. Heart attack. He was only 62. My dad and I were close. He was my hero growing up, the kind of man who coached Little League, never missed a school play, and taught me how to change a tire and throw a punch in the same afternoon. When I moved to Chicago for work, the hardest part was leaving him and my mom back in Ohio. I was destroyed, completely shattered. I called Richard at 6 a.m. that morning. I was still in shock, still crying, could barely get the words out. I told him what happened and that I needed to take bereavement leave. The company policy clearly stated employees got 5 days for immediate family. His response? That's inconvenient. We have the Morrison pitch on Friday. I thought I'd misheard him. I'm sorry. The Morrison pitch, Jay. It's the biggest account we've gone after this year. Your lead on the presentation. I need you here. My blood went cold. Richard, my father, just died. I understand that's difficult, but we all have personal issues. The Morrison pitch is worth $3 million. That's bigger than anyone's personal problems. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm taking bereavement leave. It's company policy. I'll be back next Wednesday. There was a long pause. Then, if you're not in the office tomorrow, don't bother coming back at all. I hung up on him. I'd never done that before. Then I booked a flight home to Ohio. The funeral was on Thursday. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, and everything a funeral should be. My mom was holding up as well as could be expected. My sister flew in from Seattle. We shared stories, cried together, and said goodbye to an incredible man. During the reception, my phone kept buzzing. Richard, calling and texting nonstop. Where are you? The Morrison pitch is in 2 hours. You're making a huge mistake. This is your last chance to save your job. I turned my phone off. I was burying my father. Richard and his precious pitch could wait. I flew back to Chicago on Sunday night. Monday morning, I went into the office, exhausted and grieving but ready to work. I figured Richard had just been stressed and would apologize. Maybe he'd even feel bad about his reaction. I was so naive. I got to my desk at 8:15 a.m. By 8:30, I was called into Richard's office. HR was there, a woman named Patricia, who always looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Richard didn't even let me sit down. "Jay, we're letting you go, effective immediately. You abandoned your post during a critical time, showed no dedication to the company, and proved yourself unreliable. Patricia will walk you out." I stood there, stunned. "You're firing me for attending my father's funeral?" "I'm firing you for breach of contract and unprofessional conduct. You were explicitly told that your presence was required last week, and you chose to ignore direct orders from your supervisor." I was on bereavement leave. It's company policy. Patricia shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Richard smiled. Actually smiled. "Your employment contract states that critical project deadlines may supersede standard leave policies at management's discretion. You signed it. I exercise that discretion. Now, I need you to leave before I call security." I looked at Patricia. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I was escorted out like a criminal. Had to leave my personal items behind, to be mailed to me later. 3 years of work gone. And I just lost my dad less than a week earlier. I spent that day in my apartment, oscillating between grief and rage. Then, around midnight, the rage won. I opened my laptop and pulled up that encrypted folder. 3 years of documentation. And I started really digging into what I had. Here's what I collected. Financial fraud. Richard had been inflating client billing hours systematically. I had emails where he instructed project managers to bill clients for work that was never done or was done by unpaid interns. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent billing. Tax evasion. I'd accidentally discovered that Richard had been running personal expenses through the company, his daughter's wedding, his vacation home renovation, even his wife's car lease, and writing them off as business expenses. I had receipts, invoices, and credit card statements that I'd seen when helping organize files for an audit. Labor violations, rampant misclassification of employees as contractors to avoid paying benefits, forcing salaried employees to work 70 to 80-hour weeks without proper compensation, making people work through breaks. The list went on. Hostile work environment. I had a folder full of emails and recorded conversations. Illinois is a one-party consent state. Of Richard making racist comments, sexist jokes, and explicit threats to employees. He once told a black employee that they should be grateful to even have a job. He routinely made comments about female employees' appearances. Client deception. False advertising claims, fabricated case studies, plagiarized work passed off as original. All things I'd witnessed and documented. It was a prosecutorial goldmine, and I had every intention of using it. But I'm not stupid. I knew I needed to be smart about this. Going to Richard directly would accomplish nothing. He'd just destroy evidence and retaliate. So I developed a plan. Step 1. Secure everything. I made multiple encrypted backups of all my documentation. Cloud storage, external hard drives, even a USB drive in a safety deposit box. Paranoid? Maybe, but I wasn't taking chances. Step 2. Consult a lawyer. I used some of my savings to hire an employment attorney. She was expensive but brilliant. I walked her through everything. My wrongful termination, Richard's threats, and most importantly, all the documentation I had. Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "This is a federal case," she said. "What he did to you is bad. What he's been doing to the company, the clients, and the IRS, that's prison time." She advised me on how to proceed, what agencies to contact, and how to protect myself legally. Step 3. File with EOC. My lawyer helped me file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for wrongful termination. The bereavement leave violation was clear-cut, and Illinois has strong employee protection laws. Step 4. Contact the IRS. The tax fraud was possibly the most serious charge. I filled out Form 211, Application for Award for Original Information, the whistleblower form, and submitted a comprehensive package documenting all the tax violations I'd discovered. The IRS loves whistleblowers who come with receipts. Step 5. Report to the Department of Labor. All those labor violations? The DOL wanted to hear about them. I submitted a detailed complaint with evidence of the misclassification schemes, unpaid overtime, and hostile work environment. Step 6. Alert the clients. This is where it got spicy. I couldn't directly contact clients while investigations were pending, but I could make sure certain information became public at the right time. I compiled a dossier of the fraudulent billing practices and the plagiarized work, ready to send to every single client once the legal proceedings were far enough along that I wouldn't jeopardize the investigations. Step 7. Anonymous tip to local media. Chicago has some aggressive investigative journalists. I anonymously tipped off a reporter I'd researched, someone known for corporate exposés, about the company and suggested they might want to look into some interesting financial irregularities. I didn't provide evidence yet, just enough breadcrumbs to make them curious. Then I waited. The waiting was the hardest part. Weeks went by with no contact. I was living on unemployment and the last of my savings. My mom would call every few days, worried about me. I couldn't tell her what I was doing because I didn't want to get her hopes up in case nothing came of it. But then, things started happening. 6 weeks after I filed everything, the DOL showed up at Prestige Marketing for a surprise audit. I heard about it through the grapevine. A former colleague who'd quit shortly after I was fired reached out to ask if I knew what was going on. Apparently, Richard was losing his mind, screaming at everyone, demanding to know who'd reported him. 2 weeks after that, the IRS came knocking. This one was less subtle. They showed up with a warrant and spent an entire day going through financial records. The office was on lockdown. Richard hired a criminal defense attorney. The schadenfreude was delicious. Then, the EEOC investigation started gaining traction. Patricia from HR was interviewed. So were several other employees. My lawyer told me they were finding a pattern of retaliation and discriminatory practices far beyond just my case. The reporter I'd tipped off published their first article in early November. Local marketing firm under federal investigation for fraud and labor violations. It went viral in the Chicago business community. Several clients immediately suspended their contracts pending investigation. By mid-November, 3 major clients had pulled their accounts entirely. The company was hemorrhaging money and reputation. Employees were jumping ship like rats on the Titanic. Then came the best part. My lawyer called me on November 18th. "Jay, you need to see this." She sent me a link to a court filing. Richard had been formally charged with tax fraud, wire fraud, and labor violations. The IRS was seeking over $2 million in back taxes and penalties. The DOL was pursuing fines that would likely bankrupt the company. And several former employees, emboldened by my case, had come forward with their own lawsuits. But it got better. During the investigations, they discovered Richard had been running an even bigger scheme. He'd been stealing from the company's retirement fund, literal theft from his own employees' 401k. Federal prosecutors added embezzlement charges. The man who'd fired me for burying my father was now looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. December brought the final domino. The company filed for bankruptcy. All remaining employees were laid off. The office closed. Prestige Marketing Solutions, which Richard had built over 20 years, ceased to exist. And me, the IRS whistleblower program paid me 22% of what they recovered. I can't disclose the exact amount because of legal agreements, but let's just say I'll never have to worry about student loans again. My wrongful termination suit settled out of court for a 6-figure sum, and my attorney got me a glowing reference letter as part of the settlement terms. I got a new job in January at a company with actual human beings for managers. Better pay, better benefits, better people. I'm working on a book deal about the whole experience. Richard's trial is set for March. I'll be there to testify. Not for revenge. Though I won't lie, that's part of it. But because people like him need to face consequences. Because every employee he abused, every client he defrauded, every person whose retirement he stole from deserves justice. My mom asked me recently if I think my dad will be proud of what I did. Honestly, I think he'd tell me I should have documented everything even better. He was thorough like that. But I also think he'd appreciate that I stood up to a bully, that I didn't let Richard's cruelty go unanswered, that I turned my grief and anger into something that actually mattered. Someone commented on my LinkedIn post about the new job, asking what I learned from this whole experience. Here's what I told them. 1. Document everything. In this digital age, there's no excuse not to keep records. Emails, texts, photos, recordings were legal. Save it all. 2. Know your rights. Employment law exists to protect workers. Learn your company's policies and your state's labor laws. 3. Good people sometimes work for bad companies. Don't let loyalty to colleagues keep you trapped in a toxic environment. 4. Revenge is best served with evidence and legal counsel. Don't go rogue. Work within the system, but work it thoroughly. 5. Some bridges deserve to be burned, then bombed, then the ashes scattered into the sea. To anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, stuck with an abusive boss, witnessing illegal activity, feeling powerless, you're not. You have more power than you think. It might take time. It might be hard. But bad people don't get to win just because they're your boss. Richard thought he could fire me for attending my father's funeral without consequences. He thought his position protected him. He thought wrong. Last I heard, he's living in his sister's basement. His wife divorced him, and his legal fees had consumed what little money he had left after the government seizures. Some might say I destroyed a man's life. I say he destroyed it himself. I just provided the documentation. TLDR, boss fired me for attending my father's funeral. I've been documenting his illegal activities for 3 years. Reported him to the IRS, DOL, and EEOC. He's now facing federal charges. His company went bankrupt, and I got a 6-figure whistleblower reward. Don't mess with someone who keeps receipts. Edit 1. Holy crap, this blew up. A few people are asking if this is real. Unfortunately, yes. I'm being vague on some details because of ongoing legal proceedings, but this all happened. Edit 2. For those asking about the one-party consent recording, Illinois is indeed a one-party consent state for audio recording. I always made sure I was part of any conversation I recorded. Know your state laws before doing this. Edit 3. Someone asked if I feel guilty. Honestly? No. I feel relieved. I feel vindicated. And I feel like I did something that mattered. Richard had 20 years to be a decent human being and chose cruelty every single day. That's on him. Edit 4. To everyone sharing their own toxic boss stories, I see you, I believe you, and I'm sorry you're going through it. Document everything. Protect yourself. And remember, you don't owe loyalty to someone who treats you like garbage. Update. Several people have DM'd asking about resources for dealing with similar situations. I'll make a separate post with links to relevant agencies, but the big ones are your state's Department of Labor, the EOC for discrimination/retaliation, the IRS whistleblower program for tax fraud, and a good employment attorney. Many work on contingency for strong cases. Final thought. My dad taught me that integrity matters, that standing up to bullies is always right, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply ensuring someone faces the natural consequences of their own actions. Miss you, Dad. This one was for you.